Hey everyone, in Illustrator Part 2, we're going to be looking at drafting basic shapes, understanding the difference between fill and stroke, and looking at some of the other basic tools within Illustrator. So by the end of this video, you'll know how to draft lines and shapes, understand the difference between a fill line and a stroke shape, and then begin to understand the basic functions of Illustrator. So let's get started. Alright, so we're back in our Illustrator file here. And the first thing I want you to understand is the difference between stroke and fill. So what I've done is selected our pen tool here, and then I'm just going to draw us a basic kind of trapezoidal shape here. And then what you can see is we have a shape bound by a box, which this box will allow us to kind of change how it's scaled, and you can adjust the width and height of it. But then, how do you add color to this? So what we can do is go over here to the left side of our screen, and where you see this shape here with a line through it, if you hover over it, it says fill. And the other one, if you click on it, it says stroke. And what we can do is just go ahead and add any color to it. And if we add a color to stroke, what you'll notice is our perimeter, or the outside edge, is now this red color. If we add that same color to our fill, you'll notice that it will fill the whole shape with the same color. So essentially, the difference between stroke and fill is that stroke is your outside edge, and the fill is everything that is contained within that shape. So some of the things you can do with this is if we select our shape and then choose fill, we can give a different fill color than our stroke. And we can actually increase the stroke by selecting our shape, going to our stroke window, and then increasing the stroke. You can also access this through the properties menu. So if we select our shape, you can see I can also change the stroke in our properties menu. This goes for any type of line or shape within Illustrator. So if we select and hold our rectangle tool and select our star tool, we can draw a star. And whenever we have that same properties already filled within our properties and fill and stroke, we actually just draw shapes without having to change the properties that we've already inputted. So we've already established that everything within Illustrator is made of fill and stroke. This is a common occurrence through most Adobe products like InDesign and Photoshop. They kind of work the same way, except in Illustrator it's a little more crucial to understand. So all these lines are made up of points. If we take our selection tool and then select a shape, we can see that we can see the stroke and then the outside box that will let us kind of mess with it here. But since all of these lines are made up with anchor points, we can actually change how those anchor points are shaped with the direct selection tool. So the selection tool pretty much just lets us move the whole shape around. The direct selection tool will let us directly edit the anchor points. So if we select the tool, we can start to select individual anchors and edit them. And if you select an individual anchor, you'll also see this blue circle. If we click and drag that out of the shape, you can see that it starts to round off that point. And if we move it back, it will make it more rigid. If we select the whole shape and then the direct selection tool, we can actually round off the whole shape at once. We can also apply the visual properties of other shapes to existing shapes. So let's take our blob that we've made, select the eyedropper tool, and then select this new star with a blue fill and green stroke. If I select our shape and then use the eyedropper tool to select this shape, we can see that it changes both the fill and stroke of our selected shape. So now that we kind of know the difference between the two, we can start to change the individual appearance. For example, let's take this star and open up our appearance window. What you can see is we've selected the shape, and then it's kind of telling us what the stroke and fill appearance properties are. From here, what we can do is add appearance effects to either the stroke, fill, or both. In this case, I want to give this shape kind of a drop shadow. So what I'll do is select fill, go to effects, stylize, drop shadow. And if you have the preview check mark, we can actually start to see what this will look like as we kind of edit the properties. So I'm going to choose normal, opacity 100. I'm going to do an offset of 1 inch for both X and Y. And I'm going to do 0 blur. Actually, I'm going to change that to 0.5 inches. So here we go. And through the appearance tab, we can start to give shapes kind of like a special effects. And there are plenty of other special effects to choose from. Please feel free to explore and see what you like. Now let's do some line work editing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose our curvature pen tool, and I'm just going to draw a curvy line. And I actually don't want to fill on this. So what I'll do is I'll select our fill category, make sure we have our shape selected, and then just hit this button right here, the none button. It's essentially a white box with a red slash through it. And then what that'll leave us with is just a curved line. So I'm going to turn the stroke up, so I can either go to my properties window or my stroke window. I'm going to go to my stroke window, and I'm going to increase this to 15, or let's say 20 actually. And what we can do is we can apply a brush to it. This is essentially the same thing as a line type. So what we'll do is open our brushes window, and I'm going to move this up a little bit. You can see there are a couple of different brush types in here, and what that'll do is kind of change the way that our line appears. This one has a bit more of a painted hand-drawn stroke to it. And if you want to load in different brushes, what we can do is hit this button here, the Brush Libraries menu. Let's go to Borders, Dashed, and it'll bring up a window full of different border types. I'm going to choose this one, just a simple dotted border. And then I'll choose our line, and then choose the border that we've loaded in. You can see that it's changed the way it looks, but it's pretty small. So what I'll do is increase the stroke even more. There we go. So you'll see that this shape, this line here, is filled with a black color, even though our stroke is green. This is a part of the brush properties, and what we can do to fix this is go to our brushes menu, select this button here, options of selected objects, and then we can change the colorization method. What I'll want to do is select hue shift, and then that will allow me to change the color of these brushes. Again, there are plenty of different brushes type that comes with Illustrator, so please feel free to browse around, and you can also download them off the internet. So there are plenty of other people who publish brush types for you to use. I'm going to apply an appearance to this. So I'm going to select my line, have my appearance window open. You can see that it says stroke and fill, and there is no fill here. So what I'll do is select stroke, effects, and then I'm going to give this a blur. And what that'll do is kind of make it blurred out. And I actually don't like that, so I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that. And I'm going to retry that one. So again, blur, Gaussian blur. And then I'm just going to decrease the radius here. Finally, I'm going to add in some text. So what I'll do is select the text tool, select an area that I want to apply text. And when you draw a text box, it'll automatically come in with filler text. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all that out. Select my font point. I'm going to do 48. And now I'm applying in fonts into my board. What I can do to change that is click in my font box, go to properties. You can see that I can change the character, paragraph, and area type. So I can change it to be centered, right aligned. I can change my font. Again, text point size. I can change the spacing and a whole bunch of different stuff. So please feel free to explore with that. I can also change the color of the font. And what you'll notice, if we have our text box selected and we try to apply a fill to it, it'll change the color of our font. And you can see that we also have a green stroke to it, so it is also applying a color to the outside perimeter of our text shapes. Depending on what you're trying to show graphically, you may or may not want to do this. In my case, I only want the fill, so I'm just going to select the none option for the stroke. We can also apply a text to line or type on path tool. So what we can do is hold down our type tool, and we can see that there are multiple different functions under that window. Select type on path, and then I'm going to select the beginning point of the path we just drew. And what it'll do is add the filler text in, and then from there we can change how it looks. So we can double click in it, give it a color. We could go to appearance and give it an effect. As well as many more things. So again, feel free to explore around. All right, everyone, that wraps up Illustrator Part 2, where we looked at basic drafting, the difference between fill and stroke, and then some of the other tools that we typically use within Illustrator. So reach out to us if you have questions. Thanks, guys.